Welcome to Behind the Build. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and I have a guest on today that has his architecture all over the city of Toronto and beyond. His name is Richard Wengle. Richard, I thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast.
No, it's my pleasure to be here with you.
So I will start off, Richard, with a really simple question, and that is, in what year did you realize you thought you were going to be an architect?
Well, I could tell you what year would probably be 1976. I think I was in grade 12.
Okay.
When we had grade 13 back then, when I decided that I wanted to be an architect. I'd always thought about it. I think my parents dissuaded me a bit, and I was supposed to be a doctor, but ended up becoming an architect. So I was kind of groomed in the sciences, and then finally I made a decision at one point that I really wanted to pursue architecture. Probably in grade 12, I decided that would be my choice of career.
And so you knew going into university this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think because at those days you could go right into architecture first year university. I went to the University of Toronto.
Okay.
And so I applied only to the University of Toronto because I wanted, I think my parents wanted me to stay around. Not sure it was my first choice now, but that's where I went, and I was accepted. And I think my first year was 1978. So right after grade 13, I got accepted and I decided to go there.
And you had it at that point established like a portfolio to be able to share with them. And you only applied to this one school, and you got into this one school.
I got into the one school. So I had always enjoyed art, and I had a good portfolio from high school, and I like to draw and sketch on my own. I like to do some sculpting and a lot of creative things. And I knew if I was going to get in, I'd have to build up the portfolio. So I really tried to work on all kinds of types of art, like a lot of photography, collage, sculpture, mobiles, anything that could show creativity and sort of a desire that you wanted to do original work. And I was fortunate enough that I did get in and accepted it, not really knowing what was ahead of me.
Yeah.
But other than the goal and the path towards my dream was to become an architect.
And why do you say that you think you were supposed to be a doctor?
My parents told me that. So it's ironic that now my kids are in medicine and I'm not. So my mother is now happy that she has a doctor in the family.
That's okay. Skip a generation. That's all right.
Gifts, yes. Yeah.
The dream gets fulfilled and realized at one point.
Eventually, yeah.
So you finished at U of T, and then what was the path from there forward? Where did you go?
So in the old days, way back, so this is almost 40 years ago, close to 40 years ago.
Yep.
You would basically just get away with a 5-year Bachelor of Architecture. From there, you could go and do a master's, but I wanted really to streamline. I think I had enough of academia, and I really wanted to get into the workforce and start to experience it. So you could then go from a Bachelor of Architecture, start working for a firm, and then you would work towards your licensing. So there was approximately a 4-year apprenticeship program at the time. You'd have to go in and then write exams after 2 years, and then after, I think, up to 3 years, and you'd have to qualify for these exams and then apply for licensing. So that was really my goal, was really just to get started and get the work experience required, and then move forward and then take the exams and then hopefully then acquire your license. So it's really it was an 8-year process from entering university till actually having my license. And that's as quickly as you could do it at the time.
Okay.
And so I think 1986 was the year that I got my license in the spring. But I had worked for a firm all along and stayed with them for about 8.5 years.
Can I ask what firm it was?
So the firm at the time was called Kirschenblatt, Corlin, Mattiatis, that had then eventually turned into Kirkor Architects. I was hired because I knew one of the principal's brothers, and literally I was probably the only students that went through architectural school without working in an office in the summer. Everyone else had positions, and I wasn't interested that much in it yet. I was still even unsure of becoming an architect. I did the program.
Right.
I actually applied to Master University for Medicine afterward. But University of Toronto was funny at the time because you passed or you failed. That was it. There were no scenarios, no grading. And so applying to McMaster, they had a kind of quite an array of different individuals that could apply. They weren't all necessarily science-based. So I thought I had a better chance. But luckily, I didn't get accepted. And then I accepted that my career was going to be architecture. So then I started applying for jobs, I think in 1983. That's when I graduated. And then was not the best time. It was really the bottom of a recession.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to secure a job that was a 2-week position. And I literally was put into a closet in a basement that was about maybe 6 feet by 8 feet, had a drafting table, and told to start drawing. And I can't even tell you what the fee was. It wasn't even probably minimum wage at the time.
Yep.
But I realized about 3 hours into my first day, I said, this is not going to be fun. I really said, this is going to feel like drudgery. Now, slowly over the years, as I developed my skills and started to understand what I liked about architecture, I started to find the joy. But I can say my first few months, I wasn't even sure that I'd chosen the right path. And it was really like a marriage. You get in and you think it's going to be great, you're not sure. And as I got exposed to certain elements within the field, I started to really appreciate what it was that I was going to do, and then started to kind of chart my course that way.
And what type of architecture, but also what type of projects were you looking at when you were working at?
When I first started, it was actually, I think I was drawing up a condominium. And again, this is before computers. So this is before we had any computer programming, and it was all drafting by hand. We had always done beautiful ink drawings in architecture, but in the real world, we were drawing on mylar, which is like a plastic sheet with a type of lead that could be erased. The drawing in ink and pen that was really, I think the beautiful presentation work was never really done in terms of working drawings and things. We always did it the old way by hand. So we started off with some condominium work, and I was just drawing wall assemblies and things like that. It was just very routine. But slowly I got exposed to the partners there, where there are different styles and completely different methods, and it was an interesting combination. I learned a lot there. And what I found was that when I got a bit more proficient at things, I started to become more of a residential architect, where they did have the odd residential client that was doing a house.
Right.
And I was able to find my way through that process, where I actually became one of their leading residential designers. And that was really my true love. I wasn't really interested in large buildings. I didn't really relate to them. They were just beyond what I was comfortable with. I came from the suburbs. I grew up in the north of the city, really never spent any time downtown until I went to U of T. And then when I was downtown, I started to appreciate architecture, not just suburban life. I started to understand. I think our 4th year in architecture went to Venice, and that's where I really started. It's my first time away from North America, and that opened my eyes because I was
Hardly impactful.
And that was a completely different experience for me. That was really what tripped the buzzer for me. I really felt a connection. I started to see things done by hand, old things that really I could relate more to. Because growing up in the suburbs, really, it was a very, I'm going to say superficial kind of environment that you were in. Nothing great, but, there's some interesting few small buildings. But when I went away, that's when I really appreciated architecture. And that's really what connected me. And I think that experience itself really propelled me to start to learn more about architecture. University of Toronto at the time was in a tumultuous period where they were almost, they were threatened losing their accreditation because they went off on a very liberal course. There's really very few historians there. Technical requirements weren't even considered. It was just about art and design, which was great as one facet. But, as you know, architecture involves so many different facets. To be a good architect is not just being a designer. There's pragmatism, there's structure. There's things that some people say, you'll learn about that later, but I felt compelled to have to know about all of it in order to be well-rounded. So I think as I worked for this firm for about 8.5 years, I got more and more into the single-family residential, getting to meet the clients, where I was all of a sudden, by the end of my tenure, running my own projects, meeting with the clients. They were connecting with me directly, and I realized that was the course that I felt I wanted to pursue, something that was within my grasp that wasn't so oblique and large in scale that I couldn't relate to. And I think going back to kind of my introduction to traditional architecture when I was in Venice, which is very historic, but also with the modern components, I found I really related to things at the ground level, almost like tactile. I would go even at night when we lived in Venice, and I'd go by old buildings that were being renovated, And you'd see in piles of rubble outside where they're renovating pieces of tile that were hundreds of years old, maybe, 500-600 years old.
Right.
That were put into these buildings, just tossed outside because they're renovating.
And we're like, it's nothing.
It was a remnant, but for me, it was a piece of art. There was also, pieces of stone that had been taken off because they're restoring the buildings. And these were carved by hand. And that's what kind of started to resonate with me. And my children will always make fun of me because I'm always putting my hands on a building, sort of knocking on the stone, measuring it with my span of my fingers just for reference. But I really related to the kind of art of putting a building together. Where, in the old times, like when they built churches, they weren't designed by architects. They were just master builders.
Yes.
Who knew how to design and engineer them. I don't know how, without computers. And some of the most incredible architecture was done without architects. But there was artisans who were in families that for generations would work on buildings, but somehow they were able to put everything together with beauty and with science. And I said, that's really what I found interesting about it, not the superficial glass box towers that we see. And so that sort of steered my profession, my interest in the architecture, and in terms of also the direction that I wanted myself to go in. And that's when I decided to start my own firm. So it was in 1992, again, beginning of a recession, or just the tail end of recession, the worst time to start. I think the day I started was the day Olympia in New York went bankrupt. They declared bankruptcy. It was almost like an omen. But I think as a litmus test, if you could survive that and grow in that, then hopefully there'll be a future there. But it wasn't really a choice for me. I had actually lost my father when I was actually in Venice. I was 22 years old, and I think that was a very, I'm going to say, a hard part of my life, but it was a lesson learned that, you're going to have to be self-sufficient. You have no backup. And it almost created a bit of a survivalist mentality for me that I still hold today, that I'm always worried that, is this it? Will I still be relevant? Will I still have work? My goal was never to grow into a big firm. I just never wanted that kind of exposure. I wanted to sort of stay with more of the craft, the old things that I saw that I related to, where I walk on the streets and I see the detail and I see the workmanship, the stuff that I notice, as opposed to just looking back at a huge building and I see a form, but I don't see the detail. I don't see the artistic quality. So I think that was really with the combination of working on the residential, where I got to work with the clients and we got to pick things together like stone, like wood, and watching the trades put up and construct what you've drawn, and then standing back and looking at it and saying, oh my God, that came from my head. I thought of that and it's there now. And it's not your legacy, but it's a reference to what you do. And now, 40 years later, or 35 years in this practice, I look at what I've left in the city, some of it really good as I get better. Some I see I could have improved, and I have improved since then. But it's a great lesson that I want to leave this place a little better than how I entered it. And that's the part that I enjoy the most. It's just seeing the progress and the continuous growth. And that's kind of steered me. And I haven't veered from that at all. It's never been about being famous. It's never been about the money. It's never been about being a big office. It's just about creating work that interests me, that satisfies my clients, but also leaves a positive mark on the city. And, we're lucky. We have an amazing city to live in, and we've had exceptional opportunities in this generation and the generation before us, and hopefully the next generation. And I think the whole idea is you have to take that and take ownership of it and be responsible for what you're putting up, not just to get the work done, but to really put your heart and soul into it, create something that will be everlasting, that will be a positive reference for future generations. And that's the part, it's that tangibility, the seeing it done, seeing how people use it. Like being a fly on a wall on a project is the most incredible thing. And, sometimes great, sometimes not so great. You hear positive and negatives, but you learn from that. And that's what kind of propels you and keeps you going.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found interesting about your style of establishing what architecture is going to look like is the fact that you still draw, and it's not online. It's not online, not on a computer. That you take out sketch paper and you draw it, and it becomes something actually tangible in front of a client.
It's a benefit, but it's also a hindrance. It's really because I never learned how to use a computer. And that's just giving my age away. I'm almost 65, but even when we had a chance to be introduced to the computers, and I would say that would be about 1988, it's when they started to become commercially available. I didn't relate to it. I couldn't understand it because I taught myself to draw. I was never taught how to draw in architectural school.
Yeah.
But I always say the pen, the hand, the pen, the eye, and your brain is an incredible computer. And teaching yourself to draw and envisioning the space in your head is a talent, but it's a skill set, and it just develops. And being able to express that in front of a client, just picking up a pen and, pulling out sketch paper, drawing your ideas, and, people sit there kind of gasping, like, how do you think of this? I said, well, that's how you're trained. Your brain thinks like that. I'm just showing you what's in my head and, exploring it on paper, and I can talk with my hands more than my mouth, and I can work it out in my head. I just had a recent meeting with a great interior designer, and they had taken our drawings and they had computed them and then transferred them into virtual reality, where they applied their own layers. And they wanted to demonstrate, and we tried on the headset, and we're looking around, and you can see everything. And at the end, they said, "What do you think?" And the clients loved it. I go, "Yeah, it's great. They can see it." They said, "What do you feel?" I said, "Nothing." They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Because they see it already." Yeah. It's how I'm trained. So the only way my brain works is to understand the volume and the space, and I can feel it before I'm drawing it. I actually have to have a vision to draw what I'm thinking. So I think as a tool, it's fabulous. It's good to show people, and they can see what you can't. Mm-hmm. But the whole point is we were always trained to see what's in our head. So nothing's a surprise. One of my first clients, we did a home, and we built a beautiful model at 1/4 inch, which is a big scale, a large home. And after we presented the model to him and we built the house, I said, "So what did you think?" He said, "Well, I wasn't surprised." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I saw what I was getting in the model was so well executed, but I wasn't surprised at all." So it was interesting that I think people, they tend to, they tend to think they know what they want, but they can't always see it. And then that's our job, is we try to explain it. But I think the technology is improving. It's good for our clients, but for me, it's still old school. And again, I still love drawing by hand because it's a thinking process. So I may be sketching over and over the same thing, but it's kind of processing. Somewhere up in the back of my cortex, it's there, and I'm just trying to pull it out.
Right.
And so, we do use computers for everything here, but I now use it in a different way with some of the younger architects and designers. They help me pull out details that maybe we couldn't extract from before. How do we resolve complex issues where we have intersections of different planes, or, technical issues like waterproofing, how we're going to, create proper drainage of, in spaces that are invisible to us, that it's hard to perceive. So it definitely has its point, and it's, definitely helped us, but I still like the old way, and I still sketch, most of my projects by hand, and I'll give them to the architects here to start putting on the computer. We'll get a little accurate, but they're usually fairly accurate by the time I give it to them.
Right. So you started your practice, you said, in 1992.
1992.
And I've never asked you this question, so I'm curious. Now, you still do not have a website.
No.
Okay. I know you probably did not have one then, given what you said about computers.
Yeah.
So how did you leave the practice that you were at to start Richard Wengle Architect Inc. and create a following of clientele that would come to you and largely work to support the business by referring you to their friends, to their family? What did that look like for you early on?
So, the main thing is referrals. This office is probably about 90% referral, and maybe 10% I've seen your work. The first thing people ask me when they come in to meet me that don't know me, they'll say, "How come you don't have a website?" I'll say, "Well, why are you here? How do you know about us?" And I'll ask them, "How do you know?" "Oh, well, we've seen your work and we've heard about you." I said, "Well, then that's what a website does." I don't have a mission statement. I don't believe in them. I think they're all the same when I hear them. So when I left and I started on my own, it was more about desperation. It was the bottom of recession. I started off, I think I was the 4th person at this firm, and it grew to about 130 people, to the point where I was passing by people in a building that kept expanding. I didn't even know who they were. And you felt anonymous there. And yet I was brought up with the partners, and I was to be a partner at one point.
Right.
But the work they were doing wasn't really what I was good at or what I wanted to do. It was a little more commercial based, and I wanted the craftiness. I wanted that kind of hands-on designing where I could meet with a mason, meet with a carpenter, and do the things I really like and work with the clients. That was my strength and my communication. So what I did is I started off, and I remember one of my, that it would be anything. It could be a small renovation. I was actually given a project on the side to do by even one of the partners because they couldn't do it. And from there, I realized, hey, I can do this myself at a small scale. And yeah, it will hopefully support me. And I literally went out on my own with one child. Mortgages were at 12% at the time. And I had about $10,000 from one project that I was able to earn to carry me. And it was a risk, but it slowly started to pick up. It took years. And I can say, looking back, that was the hardest thing I have done and probably almost foolish, because the risk I took was mostly out of ignorance, but almost desperation. Because
it's a good thing you're ignorant.
Well, they couldn't pay enough. They had to cut salaries. They had to cut all overtime.
Yep.
And, now they have stress tests of 30%. Our stress test was 85% of our take-home pay went to pay our mortgages at the time. Very complicated. I mean, people are hard set now to buy houses, but when we bought our houses, we were using everything to pay for our mortgage, and there's nothing left over. Even to the point where even dinners, you didn't go out. You just made your dinner, and if you're lucky, you had enough to pay for baby food. I mean, at one point, I remember I had to borrow money from my mother just because I didn't have enough at the end of the month. And that was humbling. And I realized, okay, your workday doesn't end at 5 o'clock. It ends whenever, and it would be till 4 in the morning. And I can tell you, for the first 10 years of my practice, I didn't see my children very much. And that's stuff, if somebody asked me about that, I say, don't lose that time. You'll never get it back. That was necessary to get my practice off the ground. I remember a real estate agent had interviewed me for a project and said, Richard, you've never done a house in Forest Hill. How can we let you do this project? Well, luckily I got one, and eventually another one. And kind of Forest Hill in Toronto has been a bit of our backyard. We've done well over 140 projects, probably more than most firms in the city of Toronto have done in that area. And I spoke with this agent probably about 3 years ago when he came with an offer for my own house. And I said, it's not for sale. But I said, you remember what he said? You've never done a house? Now what do you think? And he said, oh yeah, we see your son. I said, well, it seemed to work out for me. But it was really a building process. And I think what happened was every project was a new opportunity to try to do something new.
Yeah.
And I was very careful about trying to develop my abilities and style sense. And that, some people will label you, oh, you do just traditional work, but we've done a lot of contemporary work and some people don't notice. But then they start to see, oh, I didn't know you did that work. I didn't know that was your style.
Right.
I didn't know that. And then they see that it's really not about the style. It's about the detailing, the proportioning, the context in the site. And that's the commonality that people see in our work. They'll say, I can always tell one of your houses, even if it's not a style I thought you did, somehow I feel it has your hand. And I think that's a good thing. And it's just been really committing to that every project has to be considered unique. Mm-hmm. You don't want to repeat yourself if you can. I mean, some people want something similar, but you try to dissuade them to, let's try something new.
Yeah.
You're paying me, let's spend the time and enjoy it, and let's create something unique for you that's your own answer, your own solution. And so that's really been our buildup, where we've created almost a brand, not intentionally, but it's become like that, where people recognize it and they come to us because they see what we can deliver. They're great architects. There's lots of amazing firms out there, but I think we've developed a reputation that now brings us work. And there's times when it's slower and we're not getting as much and we have to look for alternatives. But it's been generally very positive. I'd say the last 15 years, I would say, has been easier than the first 15 years. The first 15 years was a building process. Then, we got Instagram, and that probably started about 10 years ago. I started just posting family stuff, and then my kid said, Dad, why don't you just put one of your projects on? So I did, and all of a sudden, I got 12 people liked it. Great. Now it's built to almost like we're close to 25,000 followers. We never had a company. We do our own. I do my own. I just post it every couple weeks.
Yeah.
Not to do it. I don't want to flood it and just make it boring. So every once in a while, I'll put something a bit different on. I'll put a contemporary house. I'll put a traditional house. I'll show one of our commercial projects like a condominium or a detail. I'll do a story, but I just do it sporadically. So the people that follow us appreciate it, and I think I see more. There's a lot of firms, they do it every day. They flood it. And, they could have the same number of followers. If they get 2 or 3 likes or 20 likes, we can get sometimes 2,000 likes on a photo, which means I think they're waiting for it and we're just holding it back. We're not just flooding it to get, I'm just doing to show people this is what I can do. And if you're not sure, if you're not familiar with my work, just go on our Instagram feed and you'll see an array of things. There's probably something there that hopefully attracts you. And what's happened from that is that our firm has then morphed into doing high-end condominiums, more boutique style, not 80-story glass boxes. There's people that do great jobs on that. That doesn't interest me because it's about money and volume. I want something that is like a house just built up higher. And I think that's what's happened to our firm. A lot of developers have sought out our name. It's become a bit of a brand for their buildings. And by that, I say, we're not going to do a modern glass box because you don't need me for that. There's a lot of people that will just do that.
Right.
I want to take what I give to a home and put that on a building. So then I go back to my experiences when I travel, and I do a lot of traveling. That's the one thing that I enjoy more than anything is going to see new cities. But I still always love London and Paris, Rome, New York. And I look at the architecture and the craftsmanship of not only the old buildings, but the new. And I look at how they integrate it. How do they create proper context and connection at the pedestrian level? The stuff that you see that you walk by.
Right.
Toronto, I can say honestly, I find very disappointing at the ground. The glass hits the pavement. We have salt. It looks rusted after a year or two. There's no thought. There's no detail. It's just expedient. And we understand why, because it's budgeting. But the builders and developers that come to see us, they say, you see something different. And we can't explain it, but it feels like a home, even though it's a building. And so we really concentrate on the detailing that you see at the ground. It's important as you look up, the building, you'll see form, but you won't see all that detail 30 stories up. It's just impossible. So what we try to do is concentrate on what people experience as they walk by. How can we make that more humanistic, comfortable, interesting, tactile?
It was just cool.
And
I'm waiting for that.
And it's an important part. And so it has a familiarity. It has an anchoring, if you will. And that's where I get excited that now people are entrusting us to do these buildings. And we don't do many of them. We maybe do 1 or 2 or 3 a year. But that's enough because I can concentrate on trying to make them all different. And I don't have to work on, if we're only doing condos, how many different designs can you actually come up with? And how many people will give you the budget to do really, really interesting things? So a lot of the buildings are just repetitions of others that have been, in Chicago or New York. And I don't see there's enough, it's not a Toronto identity. They'll bring in a European architect to do a beautiful building where we have the talent here that can do it, but they just want a copy of that. It's in Chicago, or they want a copy of this that's there. So I'm lucky where I am because I found my niche. And I really don't have any desire to push it. I'd love to do higher buildings with the same type of detail. Like I really love Robert Stern. And again, I'm a bit more, I'm going to say an old soul, where I appreciate that kind of detailing and familiarity. That the building in 30 years is going to look great. A lot of things I see now being built, it looks very interesting now, but I say it has a shelf life like of yogurt. In 10 years, it looks, I can tell the day it was built. And it's not always great. Some of it's good. Some of it's excellent, but a lot of it is just banal, I'd say. And that doesn't interest me. If I'm going to spend my time working on things, I want to enjoy it and realize where my passion is and how can I bring that to my project.
I'm absorbing all of that.
There's a lot because I have this with my clients too. They'll say, well, what drives you? I say, it's my passion for the craft.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people that don't have it. They really don't care. And you can tell they haven't worked through proportion. They haven't worked through materiality. It's not a matter of just putting 5 materials on a building and, this will look great. Actually, let's do it with 2. And now let's see what we can do. We're not depending on materials to create the architecture. We're looking at the proportion, the balance, and just the way things are put together. I'll go to a site and I'll have the best time with the masons or the carpenters where we can talk about it. And they'll say, oh, this is beautiful. And I just was at a site this morning. And I said, no, you're making me look good. I said, I gave you the blueprint for it, but look at what you're doing. Look at how you're assembling this. Look at the workmanship. I have to thank them for making me look good. And I've probably, architects traditionally are very egotistical. I think a lot of them are flaky, to be honest, because they don't understand what makes a site work well. And I said, we go to the site, we have the respect of all the trades because we let them know how much we appreciate their work. We thank them. We ask them, have a great day. You're not above anyone. You're just a small piece of a big puzzle. It's an important piece, but you're just as important. The people putting it together are just as important as you are. Mm-hmm. And I've had this issue even many times with, I go to the site and I'll meet with the super and I hear them complaining about this, complaining about that. I'll say, why are you complaining? You've been given a job to do. They chose you. You should be thankful and grateful for that opportunity because there's many people. It's like when you go to an airline, they say you can fly anywhere, but thank you for flying with us. They say, why aren't you appreciative of this? We're picked to do this. How lucky are we? So let's give it our best effort. Yeah, there's always going to be a problem and a challenge. You have to rise above that and make those problems go away so the client doesn't have to worry about them and work together. And that's really been, philosophy I've had when I can go to sites and I see people that I've worked with for almost 30 years in some cases and generations within the family business where I know people and we have a great reputation with them because we're easy to get along with, because we compliment, we take constructive criticism and we process that and we try to improve ourselves. You're not above, you don't know everything. Even after 40 years, I've got a lot to learn. I'm getting good now, I can tell you that, but I've got a lot more to learn. And that's what keeps me going. That's my kind of excitement, is something new I will learn. And every time I'm on a site, I do learn something and I ask questions, and I'm not afraid to ask a question because I don't want to pretend I know it all. And I'll ask an opinion of a mason. Would you do it this way or what would you recommend? And they'll say, this is going to work better. I said, then let's go with your idea because I trust you. And that gets me far. And so I think our reputation in the field is very well received and regarded highly because we take a different attitude.
So speaking to that specifically, there's something that I also admire about your practice differently than what I would admire in someone else's. And that is that you solely focus on architecture. You do not touch interior design. And a lot of practices that exist nowadays focus on both. So my curiosity is why only the architecture and not the interior design?
I think a lot of that has to do with how I want to operate. Mm-hmm. It's hard enough to be a really good architect. Just to be a good architect is difficult. And what I found is that many of the firms that do interior design, I think there's a common look in that I don't see a diversity within it. It's not that they don't care, but it might be their way, their vision. It may be very contemporary, but as I start seeing the same old. And I look at that and I say, A, I would die of boredom. B, I have an opportunity to work with designers of all sorts who bring to the table incredible ideas that can be improvements to yours. So I'm saying you have to put your ego away. Architects are egotists and their shit doesn't stink, pardon my language. But there are people that can do things much better than you, that are more talented than you. So you have to recognize that. And then why would I want to alienate myself from the designers that I would compete against that could then say, well, they're not passing us any work. They're doing their own. We're not going to recommend them. And, there could be a time when your work ends and you need projects. And even a firm of this stature, I'm always looking. I'm always worried that could this be it? Are we relevant still or not? So I align myself with good designers who are easy to get along with, who have the same, I would say, personalities as we do, that we're all here together to create a beautiful product for the client and a wonderful living environment. And let's learn together. Let's critique each other, but we create together. And all of a sudden, your projects have such a diverse range of style. Doesn't have to be a traditional house with a traditional interior. It could be completely different, very contemporary, mixed with traditional, very modern with traditional elements. But the point is I get to work with really great people. Keeps it interesting for me. I'm not personally interested in looking for tiles on the weekend. It's just not something I do. And when I see a lot of other firms that say, oh, now hiring interior designers, that they do everything, it's because they've lost their designer.
Right.
And their designer or two start their own practice, saying, why would I work for a firm when I can do my own thing? So I don't want to get into that. And I don't want to be dependent on other people when I don't think I have the time to really do it. I appreciate it. I've done interiors. I do my own. I love it. I love interior design, but I also love seeing what other designers do. And then the collaborative experience with a client, with a great designer, it's an amazing process. Then it also takes a little bit of weight off you, where you don't have to come up with every idea. Sometimes a designer will see something, you become a bit myopic, and you get focused on your design. And a designer may say, what if we did this way? And you step back, you leave your ego at the table, away, and you say, you know what? That's a better idea. I understand why. And that's hard for a lot of architects, because you're taught that you are the top of the food chain, and it's a problem. And people will say we're the easiest firm to get along with, because I know there are people that are better than me out there. I know that. I'm good, but I know there's always going to be somebody better. I may never be the best, but I'm trying to get better. When I work with these designers, I learn from them. Younger, older, but it's great. And, new ideas come and you learn. And you teach that to your staff, that we're all going to own this project together. It's not one superstar here. Everybody gets a credit. If an idea comes from a younger architect, I will tell the client, thank them. That was their idea. It didn't come from the old guy. Where a firm where I used to work with, I never got credit for design.
Right.
And I've always felt a little jilted by that. So I always said, if I had my own firm, we're going to work together. Everybody's going to get the credit. It's we, not me. And I still feel that way. And it works really well. I let people have ownership here. I will always oversee and contribute and guide as best I can, but I'm learning from my staff all the time. I'm seeing new things. And the same thing as I work with designers. There's some I like, some I'm not as crazy about, but as I meet new ones, kind of the bullpen gets bigger and bigger. You have almost a selection where, as I get to know a client, I can then say, you know what, I have 3 or 4 designers who I think, A, there's a personality match that works well. B, there's a talent, an ability, and also a pay scale, because they're all across the board.
Of course.
But it's like almost creating a marriage between them as well. And you can vouch for them because you've had the experience with them. And I feel that's, for me, been the best thing I can offer. And then I think our projects are enriched by the addition of having a good interior designer. And a lot of architects won't admit to that, but I feel it's important. And I think our clients often will come with a designer. So you have to be willing to say, they've spent time doing something. We have to respect that. The same way, if we select a designer, if I've spent 4 months with a client developing something, I want the designer to respect the time that we've had, because we've delivered what they want, and they have to then take our vision and enhance it, but not to just turn it upside down and start over. Because that's disrespectful, and that's being egotistical on their end. So we have a very good relationship with probably about a dozen firms that we enjoy. And as we get introduced to new firms, because the client has hired them and we see how it goes, often they become part of our suggested team or list of designers.
You touched on something there too, and that was about your staff. And you and I have had many discussions about operating a business, what it's like, the pressure of having your staff. So if possible, I try to ask a twofold question. One is, what does the staffing look like for your practice? And when I say that, I mean, what are the roles that you have for the staff? Lead architect or senior architect, junior architect, someone that runs operations. Like, what does that look like? And then the second part of that question is, from your standpoint, running the operation, looking after the sales, the concern that you and I have discussed in maintaining a flow of projects, and how does that sit with you on a regular basis? So 2 separate questions.
So I can do the second question first.
Sure.
Because that's easy. It sits on you every day and every minute of the day and every minute you're awake. You never take for granted that you have enough work and that it'll keep coming, because I've been through now 4 recessions, maybe coming into a 5th. And, I think, like I said, from my earlier experiences in life, I'm a bit of a survivalist and always worried that this could be it. And then there's nothing, and, there's no one to depend on. And now you have families that work for you, people that work for you. With families, you feel responsible to them. They've committed to you. You're committing to them. So I am always looking for work. I always said, if I had just enough work, we'd be sitting about 40% of the time with our hands folded, because we're waiting for a city process to happen that isn't going to happen quickly. If I have 150% of what I can actually do, on a great day, I'll be 90% busy, not waiting. So I'm always kind of accused of having too much, but I always say, you know what, I'll find the way to get it done. How does that get done? I end up working weekends and evenings all the time. And that's been my life. I don't golf. I don't have any hobbies. I love to travel, but other than that...
Oh, that's not true. You have hobbies. Family is your hobby.
Family is my priority, but I'm saying I don't have leisure hobbies at all. And I live for what I do. I love it. Unfortunately, I'd say maybe it's defining me a bit too much because I live for it and I breathe it, but that's what I feed on. However, I'm always concerned that, with the market, things can change, projects can get canceled, projects may not come in. Sometimes they come in droves and, you just got to get it done. And it's a lot of work. Now, the way it worked with our office, we've kind of morphed a little bit in the last 10 years where we never did condominiums before. We always have two systems within the office. We have a group that deals with the multifamily residential.
Okay.
And we have the single family residential. And again, we have some other institutional projects, a couple of synagogues we're doing. We've done the largest animal hospital in Canada, privately owned golf club. This used to be a very big business when golfing was a good business. We did about a dozen of them. We won awards for every project we've done. And we'd never done them before. But again, they were just extractions of the houses that we've done. We know that. So that brought us a lot of notoriety. But the reality is the condominium projects are run by teams and individuals that become project architects. The part where I get involved is the design elements. And then during construction, I will be working with the lead architects to just confirm stylistically that things are happening. But there's just so much work that I can't be doing that and running the business and getting the business.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason why people come to me, they'll say, who am I going to be working with? It's me and one other person or two other people. But they're insistent that I'm involved. Now, can I be involved in every aspect of it? No, it's impossible because there's just so many projects. But the concept and the design is mine at the beginning. That's where I'll sit down and develop in plan and in elevation a style and the detailing. And that's where I do it manually with sketch paper at a drafting table at home and only at home. I've never in my office working in my office here. I'm at a table in my boardroom with my clients, and it could be 4 to 7 meetings a day, 5 days a week while I'm here. So there's up to 20, 22 meetings a week, and it's a lot of information to process. So with me will be one of the associates, senior or junior or both, taking notes, marking. They become the project architect that will keep me apprised of what's happening with the city process, with the communications that often the clients will then gravitate to them because they're very accessible and ask them questions. I'll be CC'd, but then I can opine on it and jump in wherever I can, because to answer 250 emails a day and be in meetings is almost impossible. And I like to try to be done by 9 at night if I can. But the interesting part for us on the other half of the office was we had one individual with me for almost 30 years,
Right.
who essentially ran my residential and did very well. It was a lot of work, and I think there's a bit of burnout from that. And it was a very tall, thin pyramid with myself, and then this next person, and then it went off to the staff. When that person left, I was surprised, a little devastated, and scared, because then all of a sudden I was left without someone, almost not rudderless, but a little harder to manage everyone. But I made the decision at that point to flatten the pyramid out, where I would be me and then everybody else equally. So there was a point where some staff that were hired were not running independently. They're only answering to one person,
Okay.
and not being able to work on their own. They have to always see that person. And I don't think that was a positive thing, because it ran efficiently, but they were then not thinking for themselves. They were just running like robots and then asking and then being told what to do. So we did an experiment. We actually brought in some younger staff and some newer people that didn't have that experience, and said, we're going to start this a bit differently. You're going to be in charge of the project, working with me directly, but you're going to help me answer to the clients. You're going to also help train new people as we come up. And so by flattening the pyramid, I now have more people to depend on. So, there is attrition. Some people leave, some people stay, but it can be transferred. And it takes a little bit of the risk of losing a valuable person again. So I've learned from that you have to give people the responsibility. They appreciate it. They take the ownership. They grow. They become independent. They teach you all of a sudden this is being done. We're doing this. And you actually don't sit back, but you can not think as hard at the end of the day, that somebody else is looking after those things. Now, you're always going to be involved as a principal in the design and the direction of the design, but the day-to-day running of the project can be left to someone else to then bring you the problems to help solve, or to say, these are the solutions we have. Which one would you like us to pursue?
Right.
So I have control of every project.
Yeah.
I have knowledge of every project, but I have many people helping me get things done. And I find this runs more efficiently. I think it also ensures that our clients are contacted all the time. And my biggest thing is return of call. I hear from many people, I never hear back from this architect or this designer. I left them a message. I hear back 5 days later. My mantra is, if it comes in, you answer it. So, my wife will say, you're attached to that phone. I'll go, yeah, that's what keeps my business running. I answer people. I'm up at 4 a.m. and I see emails. They're gone.
I've texted you.
Yeah.
I've texted you and you've been in Europe, or in Europe it's like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Doesn't matter, but I'm up anyway. So I'm not going to wait for 60 emails to hit me Monday morning. I want to get rid of them.
What are you doing? You texted me back at 3 a.m. I'm up.
I'm up. I get rid of it, right? Because you know more are coming. So why, the old days you'd come to a hotel room before they had phones, and you'd get an envelope. As the red light would be flashing on the phone. You'd come. There's a bunch of faxes. There'd be 60 faxes, and you have to answer them. Take them back to the front desk. There's a line of other guys waiting, and you give them your faxes. You send them back. Or before that, it was just a bunch of pink slips sitting on your desk. You'd have 200 pink slips after being away for 4 days.
Right.
And you have to spend a whole night or 2 nights answering the calls.
Yeah.
Now the phone is, it's good, it's bad. It's bad because it's always on. I'm not going to shut my phone off on Friday and say, I'll get back to you Monday. People don't wait anymore. Yeah. That's not the expectation. The expectation is, I'm a busy guy or a woman. I run my firm. I need an answer. I've asked a question. I can't wait 2 days. So I answer my questions. I have, even with my staff. If you get an email, I want it answered within the hour. I can't sit. If it comes in at 5 o'clock, you answer it before you leave. So it's not sitting there waiting, because people will then email me saying I didn't get an answer. So yeah, you've kind of raised expectations, but we're known by every client. You answer emails better than anybody. And that's important. I think that's just good business. It's harder, but it also makes it easier, because then when you get all of a sudden 20 emails in a meeting and you've got another meeting, I have to leave 5 minutes, 10 minutes between meetings to make sure I can answer them.
Yeah, and other creates a high level of anxiety when you're looking at your phone.
Oh, I
see is notifications.
Right, and you come into that, who needs that? Because then you have to go in fresh to a next meeting, and you've got to be, excited for your client and enthusiastic and engaged, and you don't want to be distracted. So I excuse myself for 5 minutes, deal with my emails, get them out, make sure they're answered. And if I can't answer, I say, I'll get back to you right away. I'm just in a meeting. After the text comes in and it buzzes, I just have an automatic response. I'm just in a meeting. We'll call you back. Write it down to remember, and it's dealt with. And I think that's a good part of business, that it's just being responsible to your clients. It shows you're accessible. It shows you care. And a lot of people don't do that. But I think from our end, our clients are used to that and they appreciate it.
And what do you do? What does it look like with staff in terms of any a staff building time together? So, have you ever done, or do you ever do getaways, do dinners or anything like that?
We do like Christmas dinners every year. We'll sometimes have lunches here and there. A lot of actually builders send in lunches to our clients. They've been incredible. We got to our staff, because they show their appreciation. Right. I think when I'm away in the summer, there's always a get together without me. And they've had an annual baseball where they go and see, but again, I personally like to separate myself. I'm here all the time. Yeah. And I don't really think anybody's going to want to spend an evening with Richard, other than maybe my wife and my kids. So I never would assume, I'd rather tell them, take some extra time off. So what I've implemented, even for my staff, is we started last year on long weekends through the spring and into the fall. If we had a holiday Monday, I give them the Friday off as well. That's very expensive for the office, but it just gives them a 4-day weekend, because they have family. And I said, I think they'd appreciate that more than let's go to a baseball game. And, I think people want to be with their family and their friends more. They want to be with their cohorts. They're with them all day. So I'm just saying, from my own perspective, I love my staff. I think they're all great people, but I don't think they want to spend an evening with me, and I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't want them to feel obligated. So I'd rather say, here, take this time and you use it as you wish. And, be with your friends and your family, and you're going to be happier when you come back on Tuesday. And the same thing at Christmas. We started this year, we would always close between Christmas and New Year. And, the last few years, we realized our clients, most of them are not here in January, the first week. And I had my staff here. I started taking off the first week of January, and then my staff were here. And then I realized I don't want to be here either. I want to have some time with my family. So we started then giving the first week of January off to our staff. Again, it costs a lot of money. But the main thing is, we tell our clients, if they do call in that week, they get an answer. Everybody still answers on those days that aren't generally stat holidays. just answer your email once a day or twice a day saying, I'm out of the office. I'll get to you as soon as I get back on Monday or when we reopen on the 8th. And I think that's gone a long way for staff morale. It just shows that, your family is more important than your work. It really is. And I feel that way. My family is more important to me than anything. I love my work. I love my staff, but they also have families too, and they have to take care of them. And I think that just shows general humanity and, concern that you want to think about them the same way you would think about yourself. So you're treating them the way you would treat yourself. And I think that's hopefully goes a long way, and it conveys to them that we do generally care, because it is like a small family here, and everybody's very cordial, and it's not a big office on purpose for that reason. Even when we bought the building, I didn't want an office. I wanted a home. So we bought an old Victorian townhouse on Avenue Road, just south of Davenport. It was built in 1888. And we turned it into our office, but it's broken up into rooms. It's not a big open space. So there's compartmentalized. Everybody has a place to go. My office is off the landing and the door is always open. I can close it if I have to have a private conversation, but everybody walks by me on the way up. So if they need to see me, they know they can just pop in. And if I'm not in a meeting, they sit down with me and we can go through it. I tried to create an environment that I would want to be in, the same way I have at home where I do a lot of work at home. I want it to still feel like a home. So we've filled it with things that remind us of home. We've got a beautiful library. We've got 2 fish tanks. We've got 2 ponds, things that interest me. And we did this office about 16 or 17 years ago.
But you continue to update.
We update and we change, and we've started buying art, not as investment, but for enjoyment. Yeah. And we've created a little gallery even. And again, I do it really for myself because I want to come in and enjoy it. Our clients come in and they see it. People even have come in off the street thinking there's an art gallery. But it's also just to show what kind of pushes me, that I love art, I love craft, I love things that are made by hand. And I'm also exposing our staff to it, saying this is part of the joy. This is actually one of the benefits of being in this business, that you have an appreciation for what other people create, not just what you create. And I bring that in, and the artists that I've become friends with and that we've patronized appreciate that. I go, this is incredible for an architect's office. You've got art. You're not even showing your own work. You're showing other people's work. I said, yes, because that's beauty and enjoyment. And we learn from that too.
Oh, so there is a hobby there.
It's become art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Art is a hobby.
It's just nice to be exposed to other things. It's not just architecture.
Yeah.
And the whole vibe in here is very comfortable and relaxing. When we bring people through, they said, this is an incredible office. It's beautiful, but it's so cozy. It's comfortable. I want it to feel like you're just sitting down at home, as opposed to going to work at an office where it's just, 40-foot long tables and you're just in a row and there's no privacy. We have little moments of quietness through the office and places to gather or sit. And, we've got a library that I built up for almost 35 years. And this is only half of it. The other half's at my house, but we've got probably about 2,000 volumes of historical books, contemporary books that we've built, and, a beautiful place to sit and read if you want.
Yeah.
And, some people take advantage, others don't, but it's there. And I just felt I'd rather have it here than just in my home.
What's interesting about this is that a lot of the interviews that I've been doing for this podcast have been actually in my own studio. I've done a few where I've gone out. This is the second interview I've done outside of my own office. And it's interesting because I've been to your office a number of times. I've never seen the additional actual office space.
Right.
And so as an experience for the first time today, walking through and seeing it, it very much does feel like what you're describing. That is a home. I'm looking to my right, and then there's fish tank here in your office, and over to the left, all the books you're describing, and there's additional bookshelf outside. There's another opening in the space above to the next floor where you can see more books, and it is very much a completely different vibe in here.
It was intentional. It's like
it would have to be.
If you've ever been to London, if you went to John Soane's home, so he's an architect in the 19th century and through the early 20th century, I think the 20th century, and they've turned it into a museum. But he was a collector of all kinds of antiquities and had them on display, and that's almost like it is a modern version of that. And I just wanted to, there's a lot of collectibles and things that we found. Like, even I got a Christmas present from one of our masons of a piece of stone that was carved by hand that's on my house. But he said, I know you like that so much, I actually brought you a piece. So you have it here. I actually have a hunk of the Ontario Parliament buildings. They were doing the restoration work. They were supposed to destroy a corner of this sandstone cornice because they replace it. One of the masons said, I'm bringing it to Richard's office. I know he'd love it. I have this piece sitting in my office, in the building down Queen's Park, and it's like a relic, but it's kind of interesting to me. So I have, and people like come in and they look at the office, they'll go, this doesn't feel like an architect's office. I said, well, it is, but it reflects kind of my personality and kind of like just my philosophy about how we want to work and how we want to make your house feel. They see the warmth that we can create just in a commercial space, and it gives people a little bit of a comfort that it's not going to be, just sterile and frosty in a modern sense that you see in a lot of places.
Yeah, I feel like it's an access, an input into your mind, right? This is an opportunity for people to be able to see how you see things.
And more importantly, for the staff to be in a comfortable environment.
Yeah.
I once had one client, we have, really great Aeron chairs that, years ago were a fortune. And I remember a client coming and saying, oh, so this is what I'm paying for. I go, no, I paid for it. I said, but my family, my kids sit on these at home. I sit on them at home, and my staff sit on the same chairs, because why shouldn't they be just as comfortable as you? Because they work hard and they deserve that.
Yeah.
And I always felt that way. So I said, we've always tried to create an environment that shouldn't be challenging. That should be supportive and good to be in. And I think that goes a long way. I see some firms, they use a really crappy, Staples chairs, and there's no back support and they're not adjustable. And it's a simple thing. It's silly. But why shouldn't you be on a nice chair if you're going to work all day? You have to be comfortable. And you have to have nice light and you have views. You've got a nice location. We purposely picked down here, just in the attics, easy access for most people. It's central. It's not tucked away somewhere in an industrial park. You can walk outside, and yet it's still homey and comfortable, and it's private because it's on 3 floors. We have, a little bit of a up and down situation, but again, we divided the teams, but there's interaction, and we always have, but we make everybody come to the boardroom so that there is that mixing.
So last few questions I'd like to ask you, being cognizant of where we are. So you mentioned that you have your children have gone to medicine. So I'm curious, so what does it look like now at the stage of your life? You've talked frequently about your grandchildren. So what has that been, and watching the smile across your face?
My life is, I'm blessed. That's all I can say. I have, first of all, my wife, we've been together for over 40 years. We've been married for coming up to 38 years.
Yeah, beautiful.
And because of her, I'm really where I am. She has supported me emotionally, financially at the beginning, but really has been there for me. I've done this for my family. I want my family to be looked after as best I can to support them and what they want to pursue, but also to be proud of their father. I'm trying to show them the way that I've worked hard. It's paid off. I've found my success, but I found my enjoyment, my passion, and I've told my kids, I don't want you to do what you don't want to do. I don't want you to do what I do. You pick what you want to be. We'll help you get there. But you've got another 30 to 40 years. Find something that is rewarding. If I could trade anything or give anything away, it's the satisfaction that I've gained. Now, again, it's hard. It's not an easy profession. It's a tough profession. It's got a lot of ups and downs and a lot of emotional tilts. But the satisfaction I get from going to a site or from a thankful client or seeing something that I've done get built and it's there and it lasts and leaves a little bit of a legacy. So that's a little bit of the ego part. It's nice to have that. But the enjoyment that I've received doing it, you can't buy that. You can't pay you enough. It's incredible. And all I've asked is to my kids, I want you to find what you're going to want to do, and I'll help you get there. And I've been fortunate to be able to help support them to, reach their dreams. One of my children, my eldest daughter, is a nurse practitioner working downtown. She worked with underprivileged people, and that's her passion, and couldn't be more proud of her. She has 2 young boys, so we have 2 grandchildren, and that's been the greatest gift to my life because I'm getting to relive things that I literally did miss.
Yep.
And now they're getting good on them.
Yep.
My middle child my son is now a licensed orthopedic surgeon, and he's pursuing his dream and completing his fellowship. Hopefully we'll be in Toronto. And again, couldn't be prouder of him and the effort he's put in. But again, they've seen what I've done to get where I've had to go. And I think they understand it's not without a price, and it's an effort. And our youngest child, my daughter, who lives in Vancouver, has moved there. She is working in graphic design, marketing, And it's down her passion and lifestyle out in BC that, again, we're all jealous of. But again, I want to support her that way and say, if that's where you want to be, especially I'd love to have her here. She's very happy. And all you want is your children to be happy. And once you can give them that, then you've done your job and you can enjoy yourself even more. Because when they're not happy, that's hard. You feel it. So I'm very blessed. I never thought in a million years I'd be where I am now. So I'm thankful. I mean, in days I complain, but overall, I know I'm a lucky man and just so blessed to be doing what I'm doing. And I have no hope or even thought of retirement because I really don't know what else I would do. I can be away for a few days.
Ask this question.
I can be away for a few days and it's nice not to have the pressure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I'm looking at a building going, I wish I could do that, I'd be upset if I couldn't. So this is not just a profession. It's a lifestyle. It's a life. And my life as an architect is a blessed one. And I think, once you have that in your head, you realize if your work is your enjoyment and you derive pleasure from it and the excitement that something great is going to come, you don't know when or where or what, that's what keeps you going. And so you wake up and there's this opportunity where you think everything's down and all of a sudden somebody calls you and said, we have this great project. We think you'd be terrific for it. There you go. You got picked again. How great is that? And at that age, I'm not the oldest guy out there, but I'm not the youngest, but to still people calling you saying, we think we want you to do this.
Right.
That's what keeps me going. And so why would I stop that? To go golf? Not for me. It's not what I want. Fishing. I got fish in my fish tanks. I have enough here to keep me busy and I enjoy it. And I think the best part is, as I age and I can see physical limitations. I can see now compared to 10 or even 15 years ago, I can't physically do the hours I used to do. I realize that now because it's hard and it takes away. And it's just, you physically can't do as many hours. But what I can do is be smarter about it and do what I'm good at and what I enjoy the most. Let other people help you do the other things. And then I can continue to travel, continue to learn, to continue to be inspired, continue to inspire others that work with me, help them grow and become. I've had a lot of people come through this office, have gone off and started their own firms. And right. I'm proud for it. Listen, I wish they could stay with me, but I understand why I did it and why they have to do it. But it's nice to see, and you see stuff that you've taught being imparted and being developed in another sense. So it is interesting. But again, it's the kind of thing, why would I want to stop now? There's no point, because I don't think I'd enjoy my life as much if I just didn't have this. So having this is still important to me. And, being my age, as long as there's good health and as long as I still enjoy it, the minute I don't want to do it anymore, I'll know that's the time to stop because my work will be good.
Right.
So as long as I can keep getting excited about it, I'll keep doing it.
Richard, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for all your time.
My pleasure.
I've run out of time.
Great.
So thank you.
My pleasure. It's great to have you here with us today.